A big upcoming PC game has been announced as Steam Deck verified, but I'm not gonna lie, I am a little suspicious. Is someone lying or maybe getting a little too excited? Additionally, Steam got some really nice but really specific updates. Valve is really good at this sort of thing. They like to cater to the fringes of gaming in ways that no other digital gaming hub seems to do. Let's discuss all of that and more in today's Deck News Roundup. Be sure to leave a like and a sub on my way to 100K. Today's first stories are about a couple of updates to Steam and to the Steam Deck. Valve really has a knack for catering to different niches of gamers, and these two updates I'm going to talk about today are very much catering to me personally. Let me know if they cater to you as well. One thing I love about Steam more than other digital stores like the PlayStation Store or the Switch eShop is how much Steam seems to care about demos. Demos used to be so commonplace, and in the last decade they are more of a lost art. Personally, I blame this guy, Jesse Schell, who gave an impassioned presentation to the audience attending DICE Summit in 2013. It's been downhill ever since then. In that presentation, he claimed that releasing a demo actually harms your game sales. He provided this graph, which makes it look like games that have only a trailer sell twice as much as games with a trailer and a demo, and yeah, maybe for bad games, dude. I don't know about you watching, but for me, demos have kept me away from games that I thought I would have liked, but turns out that I don't. And they've also introduced me to things that I thought I wouldn't like, but it turned out that I absolutely adore. If you have a favorite game that you discovered thanks to a demo, definitely let me know in the comments. Personally, some of my favorite games of the year like Balatro and Sulaco are games that I specifically learned about because of demos, and that is all thanks to a recent effort from Valve called Steam Next Fest. I've talked about it so many times on this channel, but Steam Next Fest is an event that Valve has 3 times a year. It's a multi-day event that is meant to celebrate upcoming games with things like live streams and chats with developers, but my absolute favorite part about Next Fest are the tidal wave of demos. During this event, developers of upcoming games are encouraged to release demos for their games. Lately, Steam Next Fest has been getting bigger and bigger. The one in February apparently had 1,100 demos, and the one in June has over 1,800 demos. Now, you're not going to see a lot of AAA developers participating in Next Fest. Just like Jesse Schell, they're probably too afraid to lose potential customers. But in any case, the point is that there have been so many demos that Valve has had to make this big update that they've titled the Great Steam Demo Update 2024. In this update, they're giving demos a lot more love and improving how they appear in the store and how they appear in your library. One of the biggest updates is that demos can now have a separate store page, but what this means for you is that at least for these demos, you're going to be able to leave your own user reviews for the demo itself. That's going to make Next Fest even better because it serves as another discoverability tool to find a demo that you might like in the sea of literally hundreds. With regard to how they appear in your library, well, you can now add them to your library without immediately installing them. So there's a new Add to Library button that will add the game to your collection across your machines. This is big for Steam Deck owners because it allows you to add to your library from your phone or from your desktop and then start downloading that game later on when you get to your Steam Deck. Demos can also still be installed even if you already own the full game. This helps make it easier to manage your demos, especially uninstalling them after you've already picked up the full game. Finally, demos are a lot easier to remove from your account now. You can explicitly remove them by right-clicking the game, clicking Manage, and selecting Remove from Account. This is a great update, but for my taste, I would say that there is at least one thing that Valve missed, specifically the ability to filter demos in the store or in your library. When Next Fest begins, I would love to be able to look at the store page and peruse the entire list of demos available. Likewise, once I'm at my Steam Deck, I want to be able to filter my library to only demos so that I can see which Next Fest demos I would like to play. Next, when Next Fest is done, I want to look at that same list for what I need to delete so that I can regain storage on my Steam Deck. Hopefully they take feedback like this into account and make this update even better. The next Next Fest is not until October, so they do have some time to gather feedback until then. Definitely let your voice be heard. Leave a comment if you like this update, hate this update, or have any advice for what they can improve. All right, I have another update for a really small group of people, but again, I really think this is what Valve does best. They try to cater to every pocket of gamer, no matter how unorthodox you are. To me, it really embraces the spirit of PC gaming and the notion that you can just game the way you want to. Okay, so this is an update that they sort of snuck into the Steam Beta Client update for July 23rd. This one says that they added a rotate output slider to joystick and joystick mouse mode settings. This is absolutely genius for people that play some shmups. So as you probably know, there are two main types of retro 2D shoot 'em ups, the horizontal variety and the vertical variety. Most modern displays, including the Steam Deck, of course, are widescreen, so they're not immediately great for vertical shmups. They leave you with these nasty black bars. Sometimes for emulated games, they may just play in vertical mode by default, but the problem there, at least for handhelds, is the analog stick, because when you press what should now be the up direction, your ship is going to move to the right or to the left. That's what this update is meant to address. Now you can rotate the orientation of the analog stick so that up is whichever way you want it to be. This may also be helpful for other types of vertical games like downwell or maybe even pinball games. Additionally, there are some retro isometric games that were ported to consoles with a traditional D-pad and kind of have unintuitive controls as a result. Back then, they had to make it so that up was actually mapped to up right and left is mapped to up left or something like that. I'm talking about games like Qbert and Marble Madness. Those sort of games should benefit from this feature too. Finally, this can also be helpful for people that find themselves not quite landing on true north for some controllers. This sometimes happens to me when I switch from Xbox controller to PlayStation controller and vice versa. It takes me a moment to adjust to where up truly is. That might be helpful for some people. For me though, I absolutely plan to use this feature for vertical shmups, so good on Valve for doing this. Honestly, they've just been doing incredible things with Steam Input the last few years. It really feels like the Steam Deck was able to breathe new life into Steam Input, and I'm really happy to see that. Now, you know the saying, you either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain, but the pendulum swings both ways, and every once in a while, a villain lives long enough to become a hero. Well, sometimes. For the time being, EA has decided to make a heroic move, and I am here for it. They recently showed their support for the Steam Deck by announcing that Dragon Age Veilguard is already Steam Deck verified, despite being at least a few months away from its launch in the fall. Thankfully, they also announced that this game will be Steam native, meaning that the EA app will not be required to play the game. Now, personally, I feel two ways about this. First of all, I am taking this news with a grain of salt for a few reasons. I trust EA about as far as I can throw them, but also I don't feel like Deck Verified has always had the best track record with upcoming games, especially ones that are getting a lot of hype. Remnant 2 is the example that sticks out to me the most. This was the first significant game on Unreal Engine 5, and before the launch, it was rated by Valve as Deck Verified. Many people, including myself, admonished this decision and said that there's no way that this game should be verified based on the in-game performance. Apparently, Valve listened to feedback because I recently learned that it only took them a month to change it from verified to unsupported. It seems wild to me that they could get it so wrong, but hey, good on them for listening to player feedback. Back to Dragon Age Veilguard, the fact that this game isn't releasing for another couple months means the game isn't done. Not to mention, EA is continuously updating their launcher in ways that break compatibility with Steam Deck. That said, I do have one reason that I believe the folks at BioWare are going to try their best to keep EA's hands off this game as much as possible. Take a look at this. There was recently a story on tech4gamers.com about how Baldur's Gate 3 is still reaching 100,000 concurrent players each day on Steam. That's right, Baldur's Gate 3 is about to celebrate its first birthday in a few days, and it still gets 100,000 players playing this primarily single-player RPG at the same time at least once per day. It's the new Skyrim, and you know where a good deal of those gamers are playing, right? Yeah, that's right, it's been the top-played Steam Deck game nearly every single month since it released last year. I can imagine that the folks at BioWare would love for Dragon Age Veilguard to get at least some of that same love. Well, I'll tell you what, EA and BioWare, if you deliver on your promise and you release a game that has no EA launcher and is Steam Deck verified on day one, I will buy it. And if you make a good game, I will play it. And if it's one of the best RPGs ever made and you continue to keep it Steam Deck friendly just like Baldur's Gate 3 is, then you don't have to worry about a thing because there are going to be thousands and thousands of players doing the exact same thing. That's right, you do need Steam Deck and other PC handhelds to succeed, but Deck gamers don't really need you. If you break any of these promises, we're just going to move on to better games. Don't get me wrong, I'm really happy to see this announcement from the team behind this game, and I've actually been really excited for Veilguard for the last few months. But I'm also a believe it when I see it kind of guy, and I am going to wait for that release date before getting my hopes up. This also reminds me that 7 months ago, Smite 2 also announced that they would be Steam Deck compatible, and we are only a few weeks away from that release date. On the store page, it says Smite 2 is the only MOBA designed from the start to play amazingly on keyboard and mouse, controller, or Steam Deck. Unfortunately, the original game is still listed as unsupported due to the anti-cheat not being configured to support the Steam Deck, but as we approach the August 27th release date of the sequel, we're going to get to see whether or not Titan Forge and publisher Hi-Rez Studio really put their money where their mouth is. Also in verified news, No Rest for the Wicked got a huge update and is now Steam Deck verified. No Rest for the Wicked is the game from the studio behind Ori and the Blind Forest and Ori and the Will of the Wisp. It was one of my most anticipated games of the year, but unfortunately, I never played it very much due to its poor performance on the Steam Deck. Well, it looks like I'm going to lose a few dozen hours because the new update is called The Crucible, and it truly is a tremendous improvement in both content and performance. There's a trailer for this update, and the big focus is a completely revamped Serum Crucible. This mode focuses on roguelike progression where no run is the same, but they've more than tripled the number of randomized chambers and added a whole bunch of new art and music. But they've also enhanced the main game with new gear, extended regions, and new combat enhancements. Oh, and you can now pet stray animals. So yeah, goated update. But of course, I'm here for the performance updates, and I was surprised to see that they dedicated nearly a third of the trailer to these performance enhancements. I've literally never seen a performance overlay in a video game trailer. These folks are serious. The trailer says that this update comes with smoother area transitions, memory optimizations, and now makes the game Steam Deck verified. The patch notes go into a lot more detail about the performance improvements, including reduced CPU spikes when loading new areas or instantiating numerous visual effects or objects. They also reduce CPU overhead for physics simulation, pre-placed corpses, and characters outside of the camera viewport. They've obviously done a lot to improve performance for this game, and I am happy to say it's running great on the Steam Deck and of course my newest toy, the ROG Ally X. On the subject of games coming to PC, there's reason to believe that Crystal Dynamics is currently working on remasters for two of my favorite games, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 1 and 2. That's right, over 20 years since the PlayStation 2 release of Soul Reaver 2, this branding has shown up at San Diego Comic-Con. You can see here that it says Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered, and it even has a QR code, but if you were to scan that, it just takes you to a landing page to sign up to the Dark Horse Comics newsletter. Still though, chances seem good that this remaster is happening because not too long ago, Crystal Dynamics released a remaster of Tomb Raider 1 to 3 with the help of Aspyr, and that turned out phenomenally well, so here's hoping that they can do the same with these two classics. Speaking of rumored game releases, I know a lot of people that were waiting for an announcement of Stellar Blade coming to PC, and thankfully it does seem like that port has been all but confirmed at this point. Stellar Blade was the combat-focused character action game that was released on the PlayStation 5 earlier this year, or you might remember it as the game with this chick. In any case, the developer of this game, ShiftUp, recently posted a job listing for a combat designer that's skilled in PC development. This was found by someone over at the Tech for Gamers forum, and the requirements for this position state that the applicant must have PC skills, design and data work, as well as PC-related system design and production in progress. Of course, I'm sure there is a whole modding community out there that is going to be extremely happy about this game coming to PC. Personally, I'm just curious to see who will be publishing this game on PC, and I'm hoping that it's not Sony, who has been a little too trigger happy when it comes to adding their PlayStation overlay to their recent games, with God of War Ragnarok looking to have the PlayStation overlay as well, despite being a single player game. Speaking of Sony, the PlayStation VR 2 app has now shown up on Steam. The app will contain the drivers for PSVR 2 on PC, and as it says in the store page description, it's going to allow you to play VR games and apps on Steam using your PSVR 2 headset and PSVR 2 Sense controllers. Additionally, you'll be able to adjust the settings for your headset right from your Steam VR dashboard, including setting your play area and screen brightness. Hopefully this will work with Steam VR in Linux as well. Additionally, the wireless HoriPad for Steam has now shown up on PlayAsia. If you recall, this is the first licensed controller for Steam, but it's going to be released exclusively for Japan in October. It has a Steam button, a quick access button, 2 back paddles, 2 extra buttons on the front, and capacitive sticks, which are great for playing with gyro. The fact that it now has a store page on PlayAsia is great news for me because it means I'll be able to pick this up despite it being exclusive to Japan. Every time I talk about this control pad, people do seem pretty down on it, so I suspect I'm going to be the only person that will make a YouTube video on this controller. If you're one of the dozens of us that care, definitely hit subscribe so you don't miss that one. Finally, I have a pretty cool announcement. I am in a video game. My friend Gardner Bryant released a game on Steam called Doodlings, which is a fun multiplayer game that's kind of like Pong meets foosball. In any case, he just released an update called Second Base. It has a new arena and a new mode called Pins, which is pretty damn fun. This game is even deck verified. But yeah, I am in it now. So there's an announcer that talks through the events of the game, just like any sports game. And in the original release, you could choose between Gardner and his partner Emily as the voice of the announcer. This update, though, adds my voice as well as the voice of Bill from Nerd Nest as options for the announcer. I really gotta say, Bill's voice sounds amazing. He really nailed it.
Looks like we're heading into overtime. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let's get ready for sports ball. And it looks like there's a timeout on the field.
So to celebrate this, I'm going to give away 10 copies of this game to 10 random commenters. Please leave a thoughtful comment down below and I will select 10 random ones in the next few days. All right, I hope you're all having a wonderful week. Deck Gang out. Goodbye.